Hi,
Yes.
welcome back to Wild Speculations. I'm Daniel.
I'm Scott.
This week we are talking about Exandria Unlimited, Episode 1, The Nameless Ones.
Yes.
Critical Role's new short campaign.
Yeah.
I think is the best way to...
Yeah, I think they described it as a mini campaign.
Yeah.
8 sessions, 2 months.
Covering the period of time when Matt would normally be in the desert.
Yep.
Which they can't do this year because COVID. We open the episode with introductions.
Yep.
And I liked the way that Abria did it.
Okay.
And like the way that she did it gave us some glimpse into the pre-stream test game.
Yeah.
That they played. And that one seemed to center around the Fire Ashari. Or that the Fire Ashari are going to play prominently.
I think they're going to play prominently. I don't think... well, I'm not sure that they actually went to the Fire Ashari. So...
You think they were waylaid before getting there?
I think so. What I'm wondering, and it's a little bit spoilery, but that's what we are. Are we going to have a 6th guest player near the end, like maybe the last 2 or 3 episodes, because they're missing 6 days? Is this like Hangover, the D&D campaign? And Marisha is the person that they forgot somewhere?
As funny as that would be, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Well, I have a feeling like, and there are other people who have made the joke too, although some of the stuff I was like, I have a feeling they are going to be social justice warriors.
Okay.
And just embrace it. But we'll see. Because some of it depends on where Pasca falls.
Yeah.
And if she did have anything to do with that ship.
Yeah.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
2 ships that are potentially huge in what's going on.
We begin with Orem.
Orem. Liam the Halfling. It's a fighter. Not explicitly stated, but very heavily implied. I would say to the point I took it as stated. He is the Ashari background from the Tal'Dorei guidebook.
Yeah. I mean, that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
I suppose maybe you could say Alkalite.
Maybe.
But I think it makes more sense.
Ashari.
Yeah. I was super excited when they were when he said halfling.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, halfling luck. He said he would abuse the hell out of it. I'm like, I can't wait for it. And I waited for it. I waited almost 2 hours for it. Until he realized, I gave Regals shit for not...
For months, and I've forgotten twice in the first... Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times I've played a halfling and have forgotten.
Yeah.
And remembered and done it 2 times and then forgotten and then...
Yeah.
Yeah. And part of it is it's just... It only comes up when you're a halfling.
Yep.
And
And only 5% of the time.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's a 5% chance each time you roll. But that doesn't mean 5% of the time you're going to roll it.
Technically it does, but...
Well,
yeah.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
Every time I don't roll it, it lessens the overall percentage of times that I do roll it.
Fair.
And there's so much story in a 1. You know, Sam's argument. There's so much story in a 1. Sometimes I just get excited. What the fuck's going to happen? I rolled a 1.
Yeah.
That I forget that I can re-roll it.
Yeah. From a selfish perspective, once they flashed his picture with his stats up, I was like, he could play a warden.
Yeah.
Because he, they said fighter level 2, Saw's high wisdom, good dex, an interesting build, and one that wouldn't necessarily benefit from one of the class features of the warden. But I was just like, and it would make so much sense and fit in so well with idolizing Keyleth the way that he seems to. I mean, it won't happen, but I was like, oh, that'd be perfect. And he took the superior technique fighting style. Yep. Which we see later.
Yeah, the bait and switch maneuver.
Yeah. I'm trying, because my head was so full of Warden, I was having difficulty trying to suss out what subclass he would take.
Yeah.
Because that's probably going to happen next episode, maybe, is my guess. End of next episode.
I'm thinking it's going to be next episode. I'm assuming over the 8 episodes they're going to hit level 5. Be level 5 for the finale.
That's fair.
End of next episode, hit level 2.
Episode 3 would be level 3. 5 would be level 4, which would give them 3 episodes to hit 5.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, something along those lines. That's just my gut. It's a level 2 to 5 campaign. Well, probably level 1 to 5. Level 1 was probably the test game that let them all get used to their characters.
Yeah. That was my thought as well.
That was probably the level 1 adventure. Okay, level up to level 2 for the stream.
Yeah.
So.
Next was...
Dorian Storm.
Yep. And I was having difficulty pegging his race.
I got the Air Ganassi vibe right off the bat. And initially, crit roll stats, like a day or 2 after the show, I looked up to see, and it just said Ganassi. But today, when I looked it up again to kind of make sure I had everything right, it said Air Ganassi, so...
I figured he was Ganassi, but I was pegging him as a water Ganassi.
See...
And I thought that the town that she named, which offhand I don't remember, something about sheets, sounded like a floating city. Or a flotilla.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he's blue.
Right. The thing that, he kept referencing sky themes, which is what, the sunset colored stuff, the sky blue, the, light blue, the white light clouds, And then the other thing is we've established that they appear to be perpetually sweating as water Ganassi, i.e. the gentleman, and he didn't have any of that. Not that it necessarily would have had to have influenced or carried over, but it seemed like he was a much darker blue, more greenish blue than this guy, and
That's
my brain separated the two descriptions.
That's
the
fair.
races because of the two descriptions.
Yeah.
So
and because I was on Water Ganassi, I was like, well, maybe he could be a Triton.
Yeah.
But he didn't have that feel.
Yeah, not
where
at all.
Tritons always are sort of really outside of things, where he seemed keyed in.
Yeah.
As it were. And a bard right away.
Yes.
We see. No subclass yet.
Nope, not till next level.
And I'm trying to decide if he's going to go Sword Bard or Valor Bard. And the reason I pick those two is because his weapons are concealed within his instruments.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely leaning towards Sword Bard. That could be a bias because I prefer that subclass of the two. And actually, it's one of my favorite Bard subclasses overall.
Yeah.
That, the Whisper, and I haven't been able to play it or seen it played yet, but the Spirit Bard and Ravenloft are the three that most appeal to me of the Bard subclasses. Although I like them all. I really like Bards. I don't play them enough. Mainly because I can't sing, so I feel like intimidated playing one, but I do love them.
Yeah. And I don't get to play Bards enough. And one of my tropes, I guess, is I like big instruments.
Yeah.
Instruments you can't carry into battle. Mostly because I like the thought experiment, the problem solving of how do I get this instrument? How do I take this with me?
Right.
But yeah. Sword, Rose. Sword, it's such a heavy caster group, and that is interesting. And all charisma casters.
Yeah, we've got
super
all
high
three
charisma
classes.
Yeah.
Although a +3 17 is the highest charisma we have.
Yes.
The three charisma casters are 15, 16, and 17.
Yeah.
But yeah, high caster, like everyone but Liam is a caster.
Yeah. And I don't see him going Eldritch Knight.
I don't see him. I mean, you mentioned possibly multi-classing Druid, but
yeah.
I don't know. I think I don't think he is.
Yeah, because like the 2-level fighter dip is super strong, and starting off as fighter gives you the most.
Yeah.
From that dip.
Well, especially if you're going to go spellcaster, because other than sorcerer, it's the one that gives you the con proficiency for your concentration checks.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go caster and you're planning the 2-level dip,
starting is the best way to do that. And he has the wisdom for Druid.
Yeah.
And he would be a pretty good Druid. So, yeah. But I don't think... It doesn't... I shouldn't say that. If this is only to a level 5, it's less likely, because level 5 is where you get all your good spells, and it will feel like Aurum is behind.
Yeah. Because he'll barely have gotten a subclass in either.
Yeah.
And really, I don't see 8 episodes unless they pack them going past 5 levels.
Yeah,
5th level.
Same.
Starting at 2. A huge chunk of me thinks Orm's going to stick with his fighting style and just lean into that tactician. You're our tactician. We trust you. And he's going to go Battlemaster.
Yeah. And he could change his fighting style when he does.
Yeah. He could change his fighting
or just keep that extra maneuver.
Yeah. Extra maneuver and extra die.
Yeah.
So, you know.
The big question mark for Dorian in the episode was the blind side. And he said tremor sense.
Yeah. He said he had dark vision, blind sight, and tremor sense.
And I was like, oh?
Yeah.
Where'd you get that from? And in doing show prep today, I guess it was an interface mistake from D&D Beyond.
Right.
Which probably was clicked on your on senses, and it lists all the senses that you could potentially have.
Yeah.
Not the ones you necessarily do. And she gave it to him.
Yeah, she gave him the blind sight. Made it part of it. I guess it could fit in his backstory, so they made it fit. Which, fine, I got no problem with it.
Well, and thinking about it, it makes sense for air ganassi to have something like that.
Yeah, you feel the air
wind currents. Yeah.
Currents, yeah.
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 Totally. So I don't have a huge issue with it. But yeah, I was like, next was
Fern.
Ashley. Spelled Fearn.
Yes. And she is a fawn, which is just a renaming of the satyr.
Yeah.
Feminizing of it. And she is a druid. She's the only non-charisma caster of the group.
Yes. And as they were going through her introduction, I was like, what kind of druid? And then...
Mr.
Yeah. And I don't remember... And I think I pegged it when Abria did the flashback to her being at the crater.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, wildfire. Cool.
See, I pegged it when they introduced Mr. and they described the smile and the flames behind the teeth. I was like, oh, it's a wildfire spirit. That's how she has a familiar.
Do you think it's a familiar?
No. It's a wildfire spirit. We're not going to, I don't think we're going to see Ashley wild shape. It's only going to be to call Mr.
Fair. And I thought that was an interesting choice narratively to have a pet.
Yeah.
Because the subclass doesn't say that. It just says you summon.
Yeah.
The spirit. And I have an NPC one who basically does it like a prayer. And it just comes out from his hand gestures that he makes. So I was excited by that.
Yeah.
And interested in the choice to make it a pet.
Yeah.
And I look forward to the first time she invokes him to see what that does. And how they flavor the teleportation. The flame strike is just going to be him belching fire.
Yeah.
Do you think, so there was, the big joke for Fern was time is a soup.
Yes.
And is that really a saying where you're from? She's like, yeah, and Ashley committed. Do we think she's from the Feywild? Proper?
Yes.
Yeah.
They specifically stated that.
Okay.
Abria said, in the Feywild, where you're from.
I don't remember that.
When they were talking about that instance. So yeah, she is from the Feywild proper.
So, time is a weird soup there because...
Like a chowder.
When you go back and forth, you can either jump forward or backwards.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Big thing mechanically for her in the episode was the disadvantage on stealth, right?
Yeah. I don't remember that being a racial thing. Is she wearing armor?
She's probably in medium armor.
Okay. Well, she has a 17 AC, so that would be, and she's got a +2 dex. So that would be a 15 base AC.
Which is a breastplate or scale mail.
which would have to be scale mail because breastplate does not impose disadvantage on stealth checks.
Yeah.
So she's in some kind of non-metal scale mail. She did cast spells.
Technically, there is no mechanical detriment for druids wearing metal armor specified in the class write-up.
True.
It simply says that it is a taboo and they don't wear it.
Okay.
DMs are free to interpret that however they wish. I had a druid player. They raided a fire giant's forge.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they found was a chain mail cloak of protection. Weighed 40 pounds. She's a furball.
Okay.
And didn't have anything else really. So she didn't mind having the weight.
Right.
And I was like, how should I interpret this? How should I didn't mess with her spellcasting because I feel that is kind of separate and of the spellcaster. But what I did do is every time she tried to wild shape, she had to make a wisdom saving throw.
Mm.
And every time she wanted to come out of wild shape, she had to make a saving throw. She made all of them but one. And she was stuck as a horse. And the other players, she starts freaking out because she can't change back. And they start trying to figure it out. And one of them gets a really good roll, and I say, you see chain pattern in her skin. And basically my thought process was the reason why druids don't wear the metal is because metal is inflexible.
Mm.
And has been changed from its natural state, which prevents them from changing shape. That's how I
interpret it.
Yeah.
It's fair.
And if Abria takes the same, or Ashley, if they take the same line of thinking, as a wildfire druid, she doesn't change her shape, which might be why she has the animal.
Yeah. So
that might be why she's not going to wild shape.
True. Okay. Fair point.
So, next is
Dariax, where Matt tries to fit as much into one character as he can because who knows when he's going to get to play again.
Yeah. As much modeled mechanics as he can to confuse anyone trying to figure out how's he doing that?
Yeah.
He's got criminal for rogue.
He's got criminal for rogue. He's a mountain dwarf, which gives him a selection of weapons and armor for fighter.
Yep.
He's a sorcerer for the mage, but he's a divine soul sorcerer for the healer.
Yeah, and again, it was one of those things, as they're describing the character, and then the image pops up, sorcerer level 2. I'm looking at him, and I'm like, that looks like a holy symbol that he's got on. And the picture kind of cuts it off a little bit. And I was like, is he a divine soul sorcerer? I was like, I think he might be. And then, of course, later on, we get the confirmation when he casts Bless.
Yeah, and I was pretty sure way before that, too. And we know, of the spells we know he had, we don't know all his spell list. Everything we do know is from the cleric spell list.
Yeah.
Because we know he's got Cure Wounds, we know he's got Bless, we know he's got Sacred Flame, and we know he's got Light, which Light is also Sorcerer, but I think you get Light and Sacred Flame. Or no, that's the Warlock, Celestial Warlock.
Yeah.
Automatically gets those two. But all of those are available to the cleric. So we have not seen him other than, you could argue, lights on both lists.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him take any arcane spells.
For the first 2 levels, depending on the build you're going for, Cleric arguably has the better spells.
I'm not, yeah, I mean...
especially when you're, as a sorcerer, your choices are limited.
Especially as a criminal who's, as he did, posing as a priest. Sure, I'll prove it. Cast Blossom. Okay.
So good. My favorite moment of his RP-wise was basically him being Groot in the first Guardians of the Galaxy when they're trying to plan the prison escape. Yeah. And Rocket's like, well, this, and the first thing he lists is the battery. And then he goes, but we have to get that last. And Groot's like, yoink.
Yeah.
Or we can get it first and improvise. And his, I'm already walking away.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm already headed there. Yeah.
Hey, what are you doing?
I mean, he's got his 16 charisma, but he's also got an 8 intelligence and a 9 wisdom.
So good. So much fun. And interesting RP choice. Since you were talking about how he's sort of lumped a bunch of stuff into this character, one of the things he doesn't have that I noticed the absence of, no Scottish accent.
Yeah.
Now, not every dwarf that Matt has played on the show, the NPCs, has had a Scottish accent. The majority of them have.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they are from Craghammer.
Yes.
And Dariax is not from Craghammer.
The Trust Fields. I'm not sure off the top of my head where those are at.
I want to say they're on up near Western. I think they're between Western and Sengorn. I think.
Okay.
I could be totally
That
wrong.
sounds right, because I was thinking you're Stillben, and if it's there, then just the northeastern side of that would be where Stillben is.
Yeah.
So that would make sense.
Yeah. But did mention that he has been to Craghammer.
Yes.
Yeah. Next is Opal.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably the PC that stole the show.
Yeah.
Which, as a warlock, sort of thematically makes sense.
Yeah. She is a Hexblade warlock.
Yep. Which I was trying to figure out what kind of warlock she was. And didn't pin it until the fight at the end.
Yeah, same.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then retroactive, I'm like, oh, so Ted is her blade, is my thinking.
Possibly. I want to know who the twin sister is.
Yeah.
That's going to come back. And what triggered it in my head was, okay, like retrospectively, she's a Hexblade warlock. Something about a twin sister that's missing. And I'm playing a Arcanist barbarian who lost some stuff, and I was talking to you, and I was like, I'm going to multi-class to warlock because, you know, he traded his soul for arcane knowledge. That's a warlock. And the class choices, some of the things like taking Ritual Caster, Flavor Rage as a spell, where his memory's coming back because he's doing good deeds to win back his memories and his soul. And you suggested that forming a new pact with my ancestors would make me a Hexblade.
Yeah.
So I was like, random twin that will definitely come up at some point. to a Hexblade Warlock, dealing with ancestors to a Is this a new flavoring of the Hexblade that we're going to see?
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that is an interesting parallel. Yeah. So, she basically ran the flashback.
Yeah.
Which Abria used in an interesting and excellent way to help inform things going forward.
Yeah.
And she was excited to do that. Almost as excited as making Matt make the acrobatics check and saying, "Oh, I don't care, I'll kill you first episode." And then proceeded not to kill him when he failed the acrobatics check.
And pretty badly, too.
Yeah.
If he got a 5, assuming he's untrained in acrobatics, that means he rolled a 3.
Yeah.
Because he didn't say natural 1, and if he was proficient, a natural 1 would have been the only way to get to 5.
Yeah. And probably a third of Matt's rolls were less than 5 or less.
Yeah. It was a very low rolling session in general.
That's true, yeah.
There were, I would say, a good third of the rolls across the table were 10 or less.
Yeah. And Abria caught in the classic trap of gating too much exposition behind a high roll.
Mm-hmm.
Because she made the comment, "Oh, well, that's a bunch of lore that I can't give you."
That you didn't figure out. Yep.
Especially if it has to do with the character's background. Yeah, it's a classic mistake. But yeah, her going to the flashback and then winning the peeing contest.
Yes.
And we found one of Abria's lines, one of her X cards, which is bodily functions.
Yep.
It's okay to joke about them, to refer to them, but please do not imitate their sound.
No onomatopoeias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably one of my favorite parts of that early episode.
But yeah, we get introduced to everybody, and then we find out they're all living together in a townhouse. They met about a week ago, 6 of those days which are collectively lost to their memory.
Yeah. Which is where we talk about how maybe they didn't get to the Fire Ashari.
Yeah.
And more than likely is connected to the Nameless Ones. Or whoever sent Pasca.
Yeah, the Nameless, which a new faction. You have the class Myriad and now the Nameless.
Which hints at, if her rhetoric to them is true.
Which I'm taking as a big if at this point.
Is a reference to the unwashed masses, basically.
Yeah.
The people that everyone forgets, the Nameless Ones.
Yeah.
The faceless ones having already been taken by Game of Thrones. In popular parlance.
Legally distinct.
Which make a great Thieves Guild. I mean, yeah. So many good combinations there. Anyway.
Yes. We find out she's a horrible liar.
Yeah.
And probably not as great as stealth as she thinks she is.
No.
Or at least was having an off day.
I was trying to sort of peg her CR, and I think it's probably a half, maybe a quarter, because she was afraid of the guards.
Yeah.
And big bad rogues aren't afraid of guards.
Right.
Uh,
No, she's the new kid. She's the new kid in the guild that gets the shit jobs and, you know.
Yeah. She's the one that goes
That's
up.
why she's the one out there defacing property in broad daylight.
Yes. Yes.
Because if she gets caught, it's not that big a detriment to the clan.
Yeah. Posca, by the way. So I'm wondering if it's an assumed name.
Oh, more than likely, yes.
Posca is a drink that the Roman legionnaires would drink. And it was their version of Gatorade, basically.
Hmm.
And it was vinegar, water, and herbs. So I don't know if there's any connection there.
I don't know.
But I found it interesting that she chose to give them that name. And she is presenting herself and her organization as healthful for the city.
Yeah.
And hiding her symbology, the pentagram with a hand, clasping it, which for some reason in my brain I connected to Vecna, but it's a hand holding a round thing. So
yeah, it's not a huge leap.
Yeah, and hiding it with the sign of Sarenrae.
No, it was the chalice. It was the axe of the lawbringer.
That's right. Yeah. The festivals for Sarenrae.
Yes.
Which is interesting because the world presented in Campaign 1 was such that there were no festivals for Sarenrae.
Yeah.
And now there is.
Well, now there's Ray. As in, Sarenrae, is a intellectually owned being by Pathfinder.
Yes.
Which is what they started in their home game.
Yeah.
Switched to D&D. That's why the Tal'Dorei book just had things like the Lawbringer.
The Everlight. Yeah.
Then Wilde Mount happens, and we're releasing an official one. We need to include this deity. Legally distinct. It's Ray.
Not to be confused with Ra. Also a sun god. But yes. Yeah. So they had a question. Well, after their meeting with her and they walk out, Dorian makes the comment, I'm trying to figure out how we ended up working for her.
Yeah, well, Mike, what line, other than Orem's objections due to being, the...
channeling Keyleth a little bit.
Yeah. Did they go from, what are you doing fucking with the door, it's wrong to deface property, to, let's do crime? Like, in the matter of half a conversation that didn't really give them anything.
No. Well, Abria was very pleased with herself for having...
That's players that just want to follow the DM's fishhook.
Yes and no. I think her pitch to them and describing the gentrification process, who her villains are, helps soften it and certainly seem to enlist Dariax enthusiastically to sign up.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, he is a criminal.
and once she had him,
It was not hard to get Darian or Opal.
Yeah.
Even without him.
Yeah.
But that cinched it.
Yeah. Part of me also wonders if Ashley's sort of interpretation of the wildfire druid isn't some part of Michael Caine's Joker speech in The Dark Knight. Some people just won't watch the world, but I wonder if there's a bit of that
Possibly.
in her. Because she didn't get close enough to the crown circlet.
It was a circlet.
Okay.
So my theory is we've already seen a vestige in this campaign. It's the circlet of barbed vision, which is an artifact. It's connected to Loth.
Interesting.
It has to be attuned by a non-good creature, which would be why the people who had good alignments were kind of repulsed, but the guy who was chaotic neutral was like, yeah, they don't sense anything. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It gives you a -2 to your charisma when you wear it, but advantage on initiative. And then it gives you things like, it ends up giving you resistance and then immunity to poison and disease and several other things. But I believe that we saw a vestige. That's why it was so heavily boxed and guarded. That's why it fits. And the description is that she gave, while she didn't give a great, a detailed description.
Well, they were in the dark.
Yeah. It could very easily fit the description of the circlet of barbed vision. And that's why I say 2 ships could bear importance. 1, the one that's carrying a vestige around, and 2, the one we get to later. Well, I guess that wasn't a ship, it was in the warehouse, but the residuum.
Oh, yeah, the shipment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going with, and that's what I thought immediately. In fact, as soon as she asked them their alignment and stuff, I immediately flipped open my book and found the circlet of barbed vision. As like, this is what they fucking have their hands on right now.
Nice.
So,
no, that tracks.
Either she did great foreshadowing for those that know the world of Exandria and have read about these things, or I'm way the fuck off base.
No, I think...
Which is standard for wild speculations.
I mean, in the lead-up videos, the promo videos, Abria talks about how, she knows Exandria. So, no, I think you're probably right. I think it is a vestige.
Yeah. I mean, there's only 2 that are circlets headbands, and the other one is attributed to Tiamat.
Is it cursed?
It is not. I don't think so.
So if Dariax attunes to it, and he loses 2 from his charisma, which is bad for a sorcerer.
Very bad.
He could get rid of it. Which, like, my whole thing also, like, why I have to question her motivations, her foreknowledge, and whether or not the question that they ask at the docks, are these protection marks or case marks? Are these targets? And they didn't roll well enough to be able to suss that out. She promised Dariax a hat.
Yeah.
Is that it? Because she would have pegged them, especially with Orem, as goody two shoes, and Dorian, you know, standing up for the guard, and like she pegged them. If I send them to the docks without a target, they're going to find the evilest looking ship and get something off of it.
Yeah.
And maybe they couldn't get aboard for whatever reason and decided, I'm going to try to send these fools. So I think she maybe knew what was aboard that ship.
Yeah. Yeah, so it decreases your charisma by 2, gives you advantage on initiative, and then as you go up, you can use your reaction to give yourself a +5 bonus to an attack roll. You gain resistance and later immunity to poison damage and immune to the poison condition, and the ability to see invisible creatures and objects. And it is not cursed.
Okay.
So.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to touch on, I don't know, are we about done, I think? The warehouse battle, I guess.
We got the warehouse battle and finding, as I mentioned, the residuum.
Yeah. Also, classic mistake of DMs, especially DMs who use the plastic terrain and are committed to that. The setup for that battle was, oh, these guys chase you into the warehouse. And when she brings the battle mat out, she says, because I made this, basically. Which is a classic sort of, I don't know, railroady might be too strong of a word, because the players did go there.
Yeah.
I don't think she baited the hook well enough to draw them into the warehouse.
Yeah.
An empty, unresponsive warehouse, especially with Opal being the one to poke her head in, is not how you get those players to go into the warehouse. But was that warehouse empty?
Yeah.
Because that's sort of the thing right now that we don't know is who are the players. Is there a reason that boat was sealed and not sent to the bottom, towed out and sent to the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Who are these people guarding it? Or were they guarding it? Or are they just another group of people who want it?
Are they the class? Are they the myriad?
Yeah.
I mean, they know something. They wanted that circlet.
Yes.
Which...
And seemed pretty
also,
religiously desperate about it.
Which also lends to my theory that it's the circlet of Barb Vision.
Yeah.
It's a religious artifact. All the vestiges are.
Yeah.
So.
So yeah, it was just sort of, I kind of felt bad for her. And I think Matt probably did too. But Matt my understanding is, in the back he has basically the baker tray with sheet pans of any number of maps that he's put together that he can just go back and grab.
Yeah.
And it's a problem with using terrain that if there's an impromptu battle or your players go off, you're either stuck theater of the mind, which in some groups cripples them.
Yeah.
Because some class abilities are very tactical. You have to know where everybody is.
Yeah.
And with theater of the mind, it can get wishy and washy and but building those maps takes time. And on a when you're streaming especially, you don't have time to take 5 minutes, which would be a fast build.
Yeah.
Let alone 15, 20, 30 minutes. Some of those maps that Matt has done have to take close to 30 minutes to put together.
Oh yeah. I'm sure some take longer.
Yeah.
Especially with the lighting and the effects that he puts into some of them.
Yeah. So yeah. But the Residuum was interesting. And
it's a lot of residuum.
And seemingly bound for Vestra.
Mm-hmm.
What is Keyleth doing?
Yeah.
And is that why Orym is here? Because I have a feeling she sent him here.
Oh, I'm sure. Well.
And is that shipment of Residuum why?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's hard to say because, I mean, it could be just Vox Machina, keeping her stocked, all her people stocked, But that's a lot. I really don't know. I mean, what?
Well, and as the speaker, she's sort of the highest ranking druid of all of the Ashari.
Yeah.
So anything that they ship to her is, in theory, meant for all of the Ashari.
Yes.
And her attempts to keep everyone connected and informed and speaking with one another.
Yes.
And that much Residuum, you can build portals, you can reinforce gates.
Yep.
You can reincarnate your dead boyfriend. Just saying.
Just saying.
It's a druid spell. If she has enough Residuum, that's the components. She can build a Vax out of Residuum.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be why Liam is, in a roundabout way, trying to get Vax back.
I don't think so.
I don't know. He did the Caleb arm thing. I don't know. He's got the tattoo of Rudis. I don't know. That means something.
Does it with Liam, though? Yes, obviously it does.
Do we see Obria play Gilmore?
I hope so.
Because
I think so.
Liam mentioned going.
Liam already said, I go by there so I know I'm sure I can find it. That way I know exactly where it is.
Mm-hmm.
And he stopped by Grey Skull Key.
Yeah.
And I can hear the history on the air.
Yeah. Although they're 30 years after the events, so Gilmore's got to be 70.
Yeah.
If he's still kicking.
Yeah, 60, 70, that area.
So, we'll see. One of the things I wanted to touch on now that we're here.
Yes.
And asking if Abria is going to play Gilmore is a nice segue. And in the promo videos leading up to this, the Abria saying, it's weird that I'm running this game with the guy who wrote it.
Yeah.
I have done that in that a player of mine has run a game in a world that I designed and built. And it is super fun and interesting to be on that side of things. And super helpful from a design perspective, because you get asked questions that you didn't think about. And I'm super interested to find out, if we ever do, what Matt playing in this game and potentially helping Abria in her prep.
Yeah.
Because he did, because he wrote it.
Yeah.
Whether or not, like, how much of that is going to inform campaign 3. And or whatever source book they're going to put together and put out as an accompaniment to campaign 3.
Yeah. The Marquette. And it could very well influence things because of all the Marquesian ships.
Yeah.
And she kept pointing out the Marquesian aspect of it.
Yeah. I picked up on that too.
I do think the next source book will encompass things about this mini campaign as well as campaign 3. It'll be about campaign 3, but I think,
Interesting.
And it may just be a blurb, like in the back of the Tal'Dorei one, it's other continents and stuff, and they talk about Tal'Dorei, and they reference the mini campaign. If you want to do this, here's some things that could be exciting for you.
So you think it's going to be that canonical? Because this isn't the first one-shot mini campaign we've had in Tal'Dorei.
It's not, Liam did. But Matt said this is canon. The mini campaign is canon.
Okay.
Matt and Abria both mentioned the fact that when they did this, they said it was going to be canon.
Which means he definitely helped her prep.
Yeah.
So, because while she made the joke that if I say it, it's true, I don't think they would have picked her unless she was going to be respectful of the material and of Matt's process.
Yep.
And it wasn't just going to be a pigeon walking on his chessboard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, So, yeah, now makes me wonder how much of, if any of Matt's character is going to, if we should watch him for hints for campaign 3.
Maybe.
Since he has so many different facets of his character that could be anything. Maybe he's, although that could just be string on a board.
Yeah.
Thinking in a rabbit hole we shouldn't go down.
True.
But we will be back next week discussing episode 2.
Yep.
Where we'll see if we get level 3.
Yeah.
And hopefully begin to peel back the Nameless Ones and Posca's motivations.
Yeah.
Or the group's motivations. Because I don't think she's a leader in the organization. So it will be interesting.
The leader isn't like I said, the leader isn't the one that goes out and defaces property in broad daylight.
If it's an organization of one, it is.
Fair.
The gentleman was one dude doing stuff at one point.
Fair. Fair point.
And if she's coming in the vacuum, then, building a name. She's got plans. She's got a vision. And roping in a bunch of adventurers sounds like a good way to build an organization.
Well, I mean, if she's got her hands on that much residuum, though,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she's past the one-man operation part.
Fair. Yeah, it's true. But we will see you guys next week.
I guess.